Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. You know how this works? We take a whole bunch of fascinating information and pull out the stuff that really matters, the insights that'll stick with you. Today we're going to be looking at a piece called An Utter Stranger, ADD in the Family, too.
It's a personal story, not like a study or anything. This guy, the author, he takes these bits and pieces of his own early memories, the ones that are kind of fuzzy, and he puts them together with his mother's diary. It's from this unbelievably intense time, Budapest, during the Holocaust, back in 1944.
Yeah, it's heavy stuff. And today we're going deep into how those early experiences, all that extreme stuff, really affected how he developed, not just the trauma though, right? I mean, we're also going to see how even in the middle of absolute horror and insane stress, his mom's love for him never went away.
And how all of that, those very first moments, maybe even shaped his whole life, his personality, how he turned out.
Exactly. And he talks about this photo right at the beginning. It just sets the whole scene. Imagine a baby, 4 months old, staring right at the camera, looking all intense, almost scared. And next to him, you see it, plain as day, a yellow star on his mom's jacket.
Wow, what an image.
Really puts it into perspective, doesn't it? So let's lay out that historical context, paint the picture. It's January 1944. The author's born in Budapest. But just a couple of months later, March 1944, things change drastically.
Yeah.
Nazi Germany occupies Hungary.
And that's when the whole Nazi extermination plan kicks in. Full force. Adolf Eichmann, this SS lieutenant colonel, arrives with his unit, their mission, wipe out Hungarian Jewry. Just like that.
I mean, they were the biggest Jewish population left under German control at that point.
Absolutely. This baby just breathing in terror right from the start. It just makes you wonder, how does that kind of stress, that early, affect a tiny human being, physically, emotionally?
It's hard to even fathom. In 3 months, 500,000 people deported to death camps, murdered, 2 out of every 3 Hungarian Jews. The author points out, nowhere else did the Nazis kill that many people that fast.
And then there's this chilling thing Eichmann said later to his Israeli captors. The operation went like a dream, just ice cold, like it was nothing.
It's horrifying. And through all of this, the author's mom, she kept a diary. It's amazing, really. She writes about normal baby stuff, feeding schedules, little milestones. But then right alongside that, these straightforward descriptions of a war, how it's tearing their lives apart.
It's so powerful, that contrast. You have this brand new mom with all the joy and exhaustion that comes with it, focused on these tiny details of her baby growing. But then, boom, it's this backdrop of utter destruction and fear. It speaks to the human spirit, that even in this nightmare, a mother's love can be this strong.
For over 50 years, the author didn't read the diary. It was addressed to him, but he just couldn't. He talks about this neurophysiological block, like he'd get super tired, almost fall asleep when he tried to read it.
He calls it a neurophysiological block, right? Essentially, it's like something in his brain, in his body, was stopping him from going there, from dealing with that pain.
A defense mechanism, maybe, to protect him from reliving that trauma. It makes you think about how deeply early experiences can affect us, even when we don't remember them.
For sure. And it wasn't until much later, when his mom got hurt, that he finally read it. He thought he might lose her, so he wanted to record her reading the diary, as something to hold on to and to preserve this piece of history.
And it's in that first entry, just 10 days after he was born, that we see his mom's goal. She wanted to write everything down from the very beginning, so he would know, if he survived, what it was like to be born into that time.
Absolutely. She even writes about the day he was born, January 6th. The early labor pains, going to the hospital with her mom and sister, that moment she woke up after the anesthesia and saw him for the first time. She says she won't get into the whole labor thing, but you can tell she's just overwhelmed with joy.
And her first thought, her husband, and/or the author's dad, he was away doing forced labor in Transylvania, breaking up rocks, as she puts it.
Imagine that, missing the birth of your son because you're off breaking rocks. She even says that forced labor was the fashion in 1944, like it was just a normal thing.
It's wild. Then she describes baby Gabby, that's the author in such detail, his long black hair, his black eyelashes, his tiny mouth, and how his nose kept changing shape. First, it looked like his dad's, kind of big, and then it became this cute little nose.
She even talks about his first time breastfeeding and this funny little moment where he almost peed in his own mouth.
It's those small moments, those everyday things happening against this backdrop of absolute horror that really bring it home. Life goes on even when everything is falling apart.
It really does. There's this part where the author includes an excerpt from his dad's diary. It's from a short leave he got just a few weeks after Gabi was born. He talks about the universal massacre of the war and how Jews, like his family, were considered undesirable elements, again, forced into labor.
But even with all that going on, his focus is on being with his wife and son. For those few precious days, that need for connection, for love, it's so basic, so human, even in the darkest times.
You got it. And just 2 days after the occupation, the author's mom called the pediatrician. Baby Gabi was crying nonstop. And the doctor's response is really striking. He says, "I'll come, but I should tell you all my Jewish babies are crying."
Wow. What do babies know about Nazis or war?
Right. But the author thinks they were picking up on their parents' anxiety. Through their mom's milk, the sound of their voices, even the tension in their bodies. They were basically surrounded by fear, taking it in, even while being loved and cared for. And this isn't just a story. We know stress in moms releases hormones that can pass to the baby and even change breast milk. So it makes sense that it could affect how their stress response develops.
It makes you think about that photo again, doesn't it? The author says his mom's face probably showed love, but his expression, all tense and scared at just 4 months old, was a reflection of her fear.
Exactly. It shows how connected a parent and a baby are, especially in those first few months. A baby's like a sponge, absorbing everything around them, even the emotions.
And then comes the real tragedy. The author's grandparents, on his mom's side, they were deported to Auschwitz. Murdered by Mengele right away. It's devastating. His mom, understandably, was crushed. She even thought about ending her own life.
It's hard to imagine that kind of grief, on top of the constant fear for herself and her child. But she later told her son, "You saved my life. Only the sight of you next to me, in your crib, gave me a reason to go on." He was her reason to keep going, without even knowing it.
The diary entries stop around this time. Instead, you see these feeding schedules written by the pediatrician. They were for a non-Jewish couple who were thinking about secretly adopting the author if his mom was taken.
Talk about desperate measures. But the author's mom refused to give him up. Not until the very last moment she said, "I will give up my son when they're here to throw me into the cattle train, not 1 second before." I mean, wow.
Talk about a powerful statement. Then, in June 1944, because of pressure from other countries, the Hungarian government stopped the deportations for a bit, a little break from the death camps. But the fear was still everywhere. Jews in Budapest were forced to move into these crowded, starred houses, with the yellow star on them, for everyone to see.
Right. And on the day they had to leave their home, the author's mom's breast milk dried up. Completely. Like, her body was reacting to all that stress. And then later that fall, the deportations started up again. Even worse than before.
In December, they went to a house protected by the Swiss embassy, hoping for safety. But the conditions were awful. So crowded, overflowing toilets, lice everywhere, barely enough food for the baby.
Unthinkable. And with all that, the threat of being found was constant. So his mom made this split-second decision. She gave her baby to a complete stranger, a non-Jewish woman who was visiting her husband at the house.
This woman agreed to take him to the author's cousin, who worked in a German army bakery outside the ghetto, hoping it might be a little safer there.
It's hard to believe, isn't it, giving your child to a stranger? The author's mom said later that she must have been in some other state of mind, like just focused on survival to be able to do that.
3 weeks later, after the Red Army took Budapest, they were reunited. Amazing. But there was still so much uncertainty. What happened to the author's dad and his mom's sister?
Thank goodness his dad came back in April, after the Germans left, and eventually his aunt came back from Auschwitz, but in really bad shape.
But get this, when he saw his mom again, after those 3 weeks, the author didn't even recognize her. He acted like she was a stranger, wouldn't look at her for days.
Wow. What does that tell us about early attachment, right? About how important that consistent bond is. Even a short separation can have a big impact.
Definitely. And in later photos, as a kid, the author looks thoughtful, kind of troubled. He's often looking away from the camera, totally different from his brother. He wonders if that's because of what happened to him so early on.
Maybe he's subconsciously looking back at the past, or worrying about the future.
Could be. So why tell this story? The author has 2 main reasons. First, he wants to show how crucial those early relationships are, especially with our parents, and how much their emotional state affects us. It shapes our brains, our minds, who we become. In his case, with everything going on, there wasn't much chance for a normal relationship with his mom.
Absolutely. And second, he wants to show that even with deep, real love, that connection between a mother and child can be messed up. The stress, the fear, it all got in the way.
Right. And he's honest about it. He says it wasn't just the war that caused problems in their family. As an adult, he's had to deal with his own feelings about his parents, about things that weren't directly because of that first year and a half. And he admits he doesn't know if he would develop ADD even without all the trauma.
Makes you think. But he does say understanding that early period helps him make sense of his ADD. It could be a link,
Right.
between that early stress and disrupted attachment and how his brain developed.
Interesting. And then he goes even broader. He says you don't need a war for parental stress to affect a baby. It happens in every family, rich or poor, even with loving parents. Life's just stressful.
It's true. Think about it. How do our parents' moods, even their everyday anxieties, affect us when we're tiny? Maybe we don't even realize it.
It all comes back to how parents, just by being themselves, shape their baby's brain and mind. He even talks about his own family, his wife, and 3 kids. No war, but life still throws curveballs.
So what have we learned? Early experiences matter. Big time. And the way parents feel, how they handle stress, that matters too. The author's story about surviving the Holocaust as a baby is just one extreme example, but it shows how powerful those early moments are, how they stay with us.
It's inspiring, really, the resilience of both the mother and the child. But it also makes you think about how easily that early bond can be affected, even by things we might not think are a big deal.
So here's something to think about. We talked about this extreme case, but what about the everyday stuff? The stress we all deal with. How does that affect the people around us, especially kids? What kind of long-term impact does it have? It's something to consider, for sure. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.